Alright, so it's time for part 2 of my most enjoyable Warband series. My voice is a bit deep in this part of the morning, and I'm trying not to wake up the kids. So, up front, I just wanted to say the sincerest of thanks for the beautiful feedback I have received on my video on mental health. I'm just blown away by the love and the compassion and the support existing in the community. So, thank you. Now let's move on with part 2. And I will shut off the camera for this, and I'll just start with a brief intro on Nightvault. So, enjoy. So, I thought it would be fun to kind of get to know Nightvault. But before we can get to know Nightvault, we need to establish what Shadespire actually is. So I'm just going to read from the community site. Shadespire is a cursed city held between the realms of light and shadow in a perpetual twilight. Once, countless years ago, Shadespire was a paradise of a city, a jewel in the desert sands of the realm of death ruled by the Cataphrines. Ancient sorcerer lords used arcane science to defy death itself. It was the Cataphrines who discovered Shadeclaws, the crystallized form of realmstone of Shyish, grave sand. Rich in death magic, each grain of grave sand is said to represent a moment in the life of the living, and it was of this substance that Nagash built his great black pyramid. Shadeclaws could be fashioned into mirrors, trinkets, and other artifacts that could safely store the soul after death, allowing the Cataphrines to live eternally. Nagash, furious at being denied his due, transformed the city into the cursed place that it is today, leaving its physical form in ruins and creating a dark reflection where the Cataphrines would be eternally trapped, denied death, and forced to live in endless torment. The legends of Shadespire would draw countless adventurers from across the realms, many of whom would end up trapped in the mirrored city. Sigmar himself dispatched Stormcast Eternals in search of Shadeclaws, believing it to hold the secret to fixing the flaw in reforging. The Shyish Necrocrake has weakened the barriers that divide Shadespire from reality, offering its inhabitants tantalizing yet impossible glimpses at the world outside. Despite dangers, adventurers still flock to the city. Sigmar, now armed with a sacrosanct chamber, seeks not just to unlock the secrets of Shadespire, but to break its curse. But Nagash has a secret weapon. In the Age of Myth, the inhabitants of Shadespire built the Nightvault, part arcane prison, part laboratory. It was here that the Cataphrines confined their worst enemies and conducted their darkest experiments. Nagash has opened the Nightvault and freed the vengeful spirits within. Led by the Briar Queen, they seek to scour the mirrored city of any that would defy the will of the great necromancer. But they are far from the only warbands to stake a claim for control. So there you have it. The premise for Nightvault being a follow-up season to Shadespire, basically. So every season of Warhammer Underworlds is followed by another season in the same setting, in the same basic setting at least. So Nightvault is below Shadespire, just like Dire Chasm is below Beastgrave and Nethermaze is below Harrowdeep. So that's the premise. And basically, Briar Queen are the native warband of the setting, and everyone else is trying to get to the riches, basically. So that's the premise. So let's now move on to my list. What do I like the most? What do I like the least? And I can say up front, I certainly dreaded this video a bit, at the same time really looking forward to it, because I absolutely love every warband basically in this season. It's my starting point, and then I kind of back-checked and got everything from the first season as well, but this was my first box. So I'm gonna basically judge the warbands out of premises of aesthetic, synergy with deck, fighter cards, uniqueness, I guess, originality, and just how fun they are to play, basically. I think all of those things I mentioned before is kind of what constitutes how fun they are to play. So, and yeah, let's move over to the list. So at the very bottom here, I'm gonna put Thorns of the Briar Queen, and this might surprise quite a few, I think, because they are large warband, which I usually prefer, but they are made up of ghosts, and I'm not really a fan of that. I've always felt that playing ghost warbands felt a bit cheesy. I know that we featured a ghost off on the channel. I'll put a link up here. And I didn't not enjoy that game, but for me, playing ghosts with the fact that they can move through everything and being immune basically to lethal hexes, apart from pushing, gives them such a huge advantage against other warbands that I've always felt that they were a bit cheesy to play, and I've always kind of stayed away from playing those. But at the same time, they have certainly some flavorful characters. The Queen herself, the ever-hanged Varklav, with his pushing is quite potent, although it's seen in nerf. And they have some really interesting ploys with, especially I think, Magning Cackle and the Howling Vortex that can push every enemy fighter one hex. It's extremely strong here when you pull it off, and a couple of strong surges as well, which is something Season 1 and 2 warbands kind of lack, generally speaking. But for me, the enjoyment isn't really there because of the fact that they are ghosts, and I think maybe also the inability to raise. I think raise is a thing I generally think is pretty fun, and you have to kind of weigh, do I spend an action to raise, or do I kind of work with what I have, basically. So yeah, for me, Thorns of the Bright Green will take the bottom spot here. Still pretty fun warband though. Second from last, I'll put Moloch. I do certainly enjoy taking the old Troggoth for a swing now and then, but one can't really escape the fact that it's all about him. And it's kind of the original Voltron guy, really, and every upgrade basically will go on him, and everything will be scored around him. I mean, you could obviously take the earn your keep search where you kill someone with anyone else but Moloch, which is mirrored in Rothgorn's deck with, let's see, it's called Unexpected Competence, I think. Even more fun name. Yeah, so I do think they are pretty cool model-wise. I did enjoy painting them, I remember. And as I said, I do enjoy taking them for a spin once in a while, but it's very one model centered, and that always takes away from the enjoyment, basically. So not really need to say much more than that. And I mean, the deck isn't giving us much excitement either. There's a couple of +1 damage, +1 dice ploys, and basically everything else is pretty useless. And yeah, some fun stuff, like you can make the Stalagskrig whole objectives with Rooted to the Ground, and you can buy Moloch and a weapon upgrade, which is actually a one use only, his toad. So he throws his toad for 3 swords, 1 damage. With knockback 1, and then you have to discard it. So that's a rather useless upgrade. So yeah, but basically it's all about him. Moloch will be second from last here. Third from the bottom, on 6th place, I have put Eyes of the Nine. And yeah, same goes for them. I do enjoy taking them for a spin once in a while, but I think the playstyle is hard to kind of make exciting with them. You basically have to start your game with summoning the Blue Horror, and then you pretty much Voltron the leader. There's not really much payback in investing in any other fighter. Narvi and Turish are 2 useless plebs that should have been level 1 wizards. That would have made the warband much more exciting, and possibly one of them should also have 3 wounds, I think. And Kshorik can certainly deal some damage with 2 hammers with a reroll and 3 damage inspired. But he falls apart really easy with 3 wounds, 1 shield. So you basically have to put all your eggs in the same basket and try to sneak in some glory with the Blue Horror. And if you do not do that, you lose. So there's not really any other valid game plan for them. I love the models though. I think Tzeentch is certainly my favorite deity in terms of the Chaos Gods. In terms of enjoyment playing, it isn't really there. And I think one of the most fun ploys they had been really not only nerfed but destroyed, because basically you roll magic dice, and if you roll the channel you place yourself on any starting hex, and if you don't you place yourself on any objective that's free. And that's really hard to pull off now when the gloom is where the objective starts us. So 50-50 that card does nothing. They also have a fun card with which I now forgot the name on, when you switch places with a friendly fighter within 3 hexes. And you can score via 2 successful spells in a round, so that's pretty decent. But every other objective is utterly useless. Possibly you could use the one where either Narvi or Tourish is dead. And +1 damage to spells with Vortimis is pretty good, and a couple of the Gambit spells are decent as well. But otherwise, the deck isn't really bringing you much excitement. But yeah, I love the models, I love Tzeentch, so that's why they are not below this point at least. So Eyes of the Nine will be my 6th place in Nightvault. Right, so number 5 on the list, I have put Stormsize Cursebreakers. Yeah, it's another magic warband here. Lots of magic in this season, obviously, because that's what's new with this season. Magic wasn't a thing before Nightvault, and hence a lot of warbands have a spellcaster. And that goes for Stormsize Cursebreakers. Indeed, they have 3. 1 2-level wizard and 2 1-level wizards. And yeah, I mean, it's not one of my favorite warbands to play, but they can be played both the magic route and melee route. They are not very good at holding objectives. 2 of the fighters only have 1 defense, even when inspired. So holding objectives or feature tokens isn't really a thing that you can do with them. The deck doesn't really bring you that much excitement. You have the standard like Stormcast, remake a failed attack, and you have a +1 defense in the next activation and stuff like that. Do think they have like an innate channel as well, and that will auto-inspire Rastus and Amis, basically because the empower action that they can take is a spell which inspires them, and then they go to pretty decent melee stats. Amis has 3 hammers, 3 damage. That's crazy stat line, but they stay on 3 move, so they're not very maneuverable. They have a +1 spell attack, I think, as well. And the surges are pretty weird. They have succeed with an attack with 2 supporting fighters. Obviously, you can invest cards to succeed with that, but it's a really weird card to put in a 3-man warband. And the reason why I didn't put them higher up is, the deck is a bit plain, and I just don't generally like playing 3-man warbands. I don't like to be forced to do other stuff than fighter actions on my activations. I don't want to be forced to draw cards unless that's actually something I want to do. And since only one of the guys have range, you will be forced to do that sooner or later. Yeah, so poor maneuverability. I would have liked to see 2 shields on all of them, rather than the weird defend on dodge and shield that Rastus and Amis gets. But they are above some other fun warbands here, because you can play them quite flexy in terms of if you want to invest in magic or more heavily melee focus on, or possibly some defensive route, but I don't think they're top candidates for that. But yeah, so moving on. Alright, number 4 on the list is Iltharis Guardians. This is more to my liking. 4 fighters, very close to the sweet spot for me. Why they don't place higher on the list, however, is I think probably because there is a very similar warband in Diachasm, but basically Iltharis Guardians 2.0, and that's Majoris Purifiers. Both are elven-ish factions. They have basically copies of the same fighter, so Bahanar will copy Galagan, Onslane will be copied by Snail, and Eileen will copy Scathel, and obviously Majora will copy Ilthari. They have very similar stats, but Majoris are just, for all intents and purposes, better. But let's not focus too much on Majoris, that's just a caveat, I think, but it takes away from their uniqueness. Their inspired mechanic is fun and unique, but not especially good, I would argue. Including a lot of heal cards isn't really what you want to be focusing on. unless you're playing Voltron meta, but it's kind of necessary to do it here if you want to inspire them. The only fighter in the warband that can actually inspire without any aid of cards is the leader, which has the reaction to heal after rolling a crit in a casting roll. The other guys and gals have pretty funny reactions as well, so every fighter here has a reaction, and that's something I really like with this warband. So Galagan will crit you back in defense. Scathel will do an extra ping damage when he crits an attack, so it's not Grievous, it's just a ping afterwards, it's a reaction, so it actually stacks with Grievous. Onslane can shoot again when she kills someone, and the leader, yeah, as I said, will heal, or even fake heal for that matter, when she rolls a crit in a casting roll. And that's for spell attacks and gambit spells. So the inspired condition is receive healing, or would receive healing basically. So cards that are actually playable when you don't have any wound counters will also inspire them. But pay attention to the actual wording there, because not all cards are actually playable when you don't have wound counters. In terms of the deck, there are actually quite a few decent searches here. We have Lith Spirits for making your second reaction in the round, Song of Hatred for casting your second successful spell in the round. Strike Swiftly is kill someone with a charge, and that's not particularly great, but it's not terrible either. A lot of warbands in Season 1 and 2 have similar cards, and they actually have a couple of end phases that work pretty well, especially in the gloomy days that we now face. Domain Denied if is no enemy fights or holding objectives, and Reclaim the Lamenteer if you hold every objective in one place territory for 2 glory. So a lot of warbands have similar cards, obviously. The other stuff isn't really very innovative or great for that matter. In terms of ploys and gambit spells, we have a couple. You have 2 ways to heal via the ploys here. Leech Power is when you stand on an objective with the leader and remove it from the battlefield to heal 1 wound. And that can be played even if you don't have any wound counters. We also have Healing Amphora, is when you choose a friendly Galagan or a friendly fighter adjacent to him. So if that's playable, it's basically just a healing potion for the fighter chosen. And then there is a pretty decent spell, Pangs of the Great Lack, and yeah, great range. Once early for 5 hexes cast. I think the Spring Seed Step is a fun card as well. It's a reaction, so that's a good thing if you want to score the Lith Spirit Surge. It's basically countercharge, but for your own fighters. You play it after a friendly fighter's move action. Choose another friendly fighter and push them up to 3 hexes to be adjacent. So that works on a charge as well, because a charge is a move. In terms of upgrades, they have like an Infection Wounds, and there is a pretty funny spell attack upgrade for the leader, but it's only 1 damage, so it's worse than her inspired spell in terms of damage output. But if you succeed, you give the target a move token. I think that +1 defense for Galagan is also pretty decent, so you can actually go up to 3 shields, and that's kind of crazy. But let's not talk too much about balance and how strong they actually are. Are they fun to play? I mean, in terms of models, they are probably one of the most beautiful warband out there, I would argue. And lots of people paint them up like the Four Seasons, and that just looks great. I mean, the deck certainly hasn't aged all that well. It's not super exciting stuff in there compared to newer seasons, obviously. But it is a 4-man warband, so they are pretty flexy in how you play them. I think most people play them rather defensively, like placing Galagan up front as a gatekeeper with his 2 shields. Maybe just push him up to a Gloom token and be super tanky with him. And the fact that he crits back in defense, regardless if you're adjacent or not, it's pretty mean. So even if you shoot him for 4 hexes away, he will still ping you back. Maybe that doesn't really make much sense from a lore perspective, but what does make a lot of sense from a lore perspective is that they actually heal, inspire via healing though, because the faction as a whole is all about healing nature basically and removing the taint, so that makes a lot of sense. So yeah, so they play pretty flexy, you can still have fun with them, and I think they certainly deserve a 4th spot here in Nightvault. So let's move on. Top 3 placement now. Alright, so the bronze medal we'll go to Thundrix Profiteers. 5 fighters, that's more to my liking. They all have ranged attacks. They also have some decent melee attacks. Balloon Man can pack a punch in melee. And, I mean, Alenson, the sneaky assassin, bringing up the rear. I mean, the deck isn't bad either. It's an incomplete deck, so you have to complement it if you want to play rivals. But 2 great searches in headshot and steady aim. Seeking advancement, sound finances go very well with Lutheramite. Toxic gases is probably one of the best ploys in the game. And Magmal Drawth is decent, and I think just the fact that the leader isn't even the best fighter in the gang. Deadeye Lund is always the MVP for me with his 2 hammers, 2 damage, re-ranged with cleave. He has a crazy good base profile that took a buff with Glory Seeker, Fights Ferocity, Eagle Eye, possibly the reroll from standing on Gloom as well. So potentially you're rolling 2 hammers with 2 rerolls for 4 damage. That's just insane. So yeah, I think the fact that you are a ranged warband, but you are no pushover in melee as well. And you 5 fighters and all inspired to an extra wound, so quite tanky. Leader on 2 shields, everyone else on shields basically. I think 2 of the fights have dodge, but so quite durable, as dwarfs should be. And yeah, play them defensively if you want to, but they also do aggression quite good, I would argue. So there's an all-round fun warband to play. And the models are awesome as well. Who doesn't like armor-clad techno dwarves, eh? On to second place. The silver medal here will go to the largest warband in the game. Zarbag skits will swarm the battlefield and you will have a blast doing so. Whether you'll go the objective feature token route or just try to kill and murder everything, you'll have a lot of fun doing so. The scurry reaction is really good, which is move when an adjacent friendly fighter move with the goblins. The scatter with Snurk Sour Tongue, the fanatic, is hilarious. And I mean the squigs inspire to 3 hammers, 2 damage with cleave if you touch the squig herder, so well if you kill him. And I think the inspired condition is dirt easy now that there's so many strong surges in the game. But this isn't about how good they are, this is how fun they are, but I have never had a boring game with them. Yeah, sure, they can fall apart, they are puny fighters, but once you inspire them, especially now that Gloom is a thing, that 2 dodges will kind of hurt your opponent. And I think you should do pretty well with them and have fun with them. And I mean, punching up inspired attack, weapon caddy your way all to the bank. I mean, you'll have a really good time with these guys. I mean, the models are hilarious and beautiful and fantastic as well. And the fact that you can score two glory surges pretty easily. One is kill someone with Snurk and the other one is kill a fighter with 2 upgrades. So yes, dirt easy. And if you have the possibility, while the objective is still playable, just score infestation just to rub it in. I mean, in terms of the deck, apart from those 2 searches I mentioned, there's not, and the crazy end phase, there's not really much in there. Upgrades wise, there's really nothing useful, but doesn't really matter because the fighters in and of itself are so fun, and just give them some nifty weapons and strength upgrades and go crazy. So on to first place. Yes, as you might have figured out by now, the first place will be claimed by Godsworn Hunt. First up, I must say that I do think the Godsworn Hunt have the most beautiful models in the game. I just love the barbarian theme and the dynamic poses. They look really fantastic. And I mean, it was one of the first warbands I got, and it's just a typical underdog warband for me. I can't really pinpoint why I love them so much. I just love pulling out the Dark Destiny card, which is the 50-50 to stay alive after getting killed in a fighter. Traditionally, I've always enjoyed the Oath cards, although now I probably wouldn't play them. Path to Glory is a great fun card. With +1 dice and +1 wound. Other than that, there's really not much I take from the faction deck itself. But the fact that 2 of the fights inspired to 3 damage, and they inspired quite easily. So yes, that you can kind of go +2/+3 damage in a single power step. If you have the right upgrades, it's a really fun way to just vault from useless fighters into becoming real killing machines. So I'm gonna tell you about the episode that happened in our second battle report on the channel. If you haven't watched it already, then it's kind of lo-fi and doesn't have all the bells and whistles I now put in the battle report. But basically in the second activation, I had a huge chance to kill off Kanan with the Grundon. So in the first activation, I had killed Nohem, I think, the archer, with outrun death on Jagathra, so I scored the wing death and glory from the kill as well, so I got 2 glory to spend. And then I put great strength and savage strength or something like that on Grundon, going from 2 hammers 2 damage to inspiring him. Just inspiring him takes him to 3 damage, and the strength upgrades will nudge him all the way up to 5. And then I played inspired attack. So I was hitting for 6 damage with 3 hammers. And then Bonta was getting really nervous and realizing that, okay, you can really wipe Kanan in the second activation. Gotta do something about this. And then he played this, I'm not sure what it's called, but it's -1 dice adjacent basically. And but I just felt I needed to go big or go home. I still charged Kanan. I rolled 1 hammer. He rolled a single defense, so he rolled the shield. I had that big chance of just killing Kanan in one go with Grundon. And that's just why I love the Gods of Hunt. They are super swingy. Sometimes we'll have terrible games with them and basically not hit anything in. But sometimes you will have these games where you are just a bloody accurate killing machine and just wipe the board with great warbands. So I think that they are quite speedy and just a great fun aggro warband. And the fact that everyone is expendable just makes them so fun for me. So yeah, Gods of Hunt, congratulations, you have won my heart and the first place among the most enjoyable warbands from Nightvault. So this has been it, and I hope you enjoyed this one. It came straight from my heart, and yeah, don't forget to subscribe if you like, no pressure. Like the video if you liked it, comment if you feel like commenting, do all the stuff that you want, basically. Happy continuation of your week, take care, and see you around.